Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. I'm your host, Paul Valley, and I was supposed to have a co-host today. Looks like they are unable to join me last minute. Their wife called them. It was Brooks Rothschild from the Gary Williams Stole My Lawn Furniture podcast. He was supposed to join the show, and about 10 minutes before the show started, turns out his wife had to work late, and he has to be with his son, so he was unable to join the show. I'm working on getting somebody on here with me, but until that happens, it's going to be just me flying solo today. Zach Moore will be back with us next week to join us for his every other week commitment to the Bat Around. Today's show brought to you by Royal Farms. Royal Farms is heating up the grill this winter. You can get any grilled chicken sandwich at your neighborhood Rofo for just $6.99. Plus, it's just $20 for a 12-piece mix of their world-famous chicken. And they've got you covered for breakfast, too. For a limited time, combine any breakfast sandwich, perhaps one of their new Southern-style biscuits, plus their baby cake, hash browns, and any size beverage for just $7. And speaking of breakfast beverages, try Rofo's new coffee and cappuccino flavors, mocha and horchata. Get to your neighborhood Royal Farms today. Well, it is Sunday. It is 5 p.m. We are rolling right along here with the Bat Around, and the Orioles, they have played two Grapefruit League games, losing on Saturday 10-5 against the Pittsburgh Pirates in Sarasota, and winning today 7-3 against the Philadelphia Phillies in wherever the hell it is that Philadelphia Phillies play spring training baseball. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't care less, to be perfectly honest with you. They played baseball today, and that's all that matters, and the Orioles were the road team today. Going back to yesterday's game, some highlights. Orioles' new fourth outfielder, Ramon Laureano, got the scoring started for the Birds with an RBI single up the middle after Jackson Holliday had a outfielder's choice ground out. Of course, Mountcastle had led off the inning with a walk. He advanced to second. Advanced to third, and I believe he scored on a wild pitch. Then Holliday got on a fielder's choice, ended up scoring from second base on a base hit up the middle by Laureano. And Holliday got to show off some of the wheels because that base hit to center field was shallow. It was ground ball up the middle. It was fielded shallow. Holliday was probably about 5-6 steps past third base when the throw came in, and he beat the throw to the plate. Also, it was a poor throw, and the catcher didn't come down with it. He may have been able to get that tag on if he actually had the ball. So, but still, Holliday scores that run. Orioles end up losing that game, however, 10-5. Dylan Carlson had a sacrifice fly. Emmanuel Rivera had hit a two-run homer. Mountcastle, a nice showing yesterday. He had a single and a flare to right field and a walk in his two plate appearances. Again, Jackson Holliday 0 for 2, had a strikeout, and he reached on that fielder's choice where he scored on the Laureano single. Albert Suarez. It's the first game of spring training, right? So we're not reading too much into it. I will say, inning and 2/3, 3 hits, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, 2 earned runs. He was missing up with the fastball a good bit. He bounced quite a few curveballs. The times that we saw Suarez struggle last year was when he had a hard time finding his control, finding the strike zone, with a lot of pitches thrown in a short amount of innings. And that's what happened yesterday. Over 40 pitches in an inning and 2/3. He comes out of the ball game trailing in that one. The Orioles kept it close. It was 6-5 going into the ninth. And then minor league reliever, last name Hyde, but not like Brandon Hyde, H-E-I-D. He gives up a long grand slam to the Pirates. They end up winning that ball game 10-5 in a game that, again, it does not matter. It was the first of 30 Grapefruit League games that the Orioles are going to play this spring. Then today's game. The Orioles have a much better outcome. They beat the Philadelphia Phillies 7-3. Kate Povich looking really good. And again, that doesn't matter either. It beats the alternative, that's for damn sure. But Povich, 2 perfect innings pitched, 1 strikeout, no hits, no walks, no runs, 26 pitches, 15 strikes for the young lefty, which is what you like to see for Povich coming in there facing that Phillies lineup that didn't have guys like Bryce Harper or Trey Turner in it, but Nick Castellanos was in the lineup, Brandon Marsh, Kyle Schwarber, they were in the lineup. Povich held his own against the first 6 in that Phillies order. Kobe Mayo, 2-run single for the Orioles, 1 for 3 on the day. Samuel Basayo, 1 for 3 with a single. Heston Kjerstad, 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts. Didn't look particularly good in either of those at-bats where he ended up striking out. But again, it's his first game of the spring. So you can't really read too much into it. It's hard to tell really when you can start reading into performances in spring. Yeah, if you're 3 weeks in, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in, and some of your guys still aren't hitting, some guys, they get a pass. Gunnar Henderson, I'm going to hold off on saying Adley Rutschman, but Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westburg, guys like that, they get a pass because we know what they can do. They've proven that they can hit. Adley's proven that he can hit in the past, but the Orioles fans are going to feel a lot better if he hits from day one this spring. So we're going to see a lot more games, a lot more things that will start to matter later on in the spring. Usually it's probably about the last week or so when they start playing 5, 6, 7 innings. The pitchers are starting to pitch 4, 5, 6 innings in spring training. That's when the results start to matter a little bit more. But even then, nothing really matters till you get to the regular season. And I don't care who you are. When you're a big league player and you're kind of going through the motions, getting yourself ready in spring training, those games have a different feel than when you're into the regular season. So you're going to see some guys really turn it on once the regular season starts. Do want to point out Taylor Bovver came back to the Orioles this offseason on a minor league deal. He led off the game for the Orioles. Had a really nice first at bat to start the game. Saw 9 pitches, ended up taking a walk. Really solid at bat from Bovver, so you'd like to see that. He's going to be minor league depth for them. He's not going to be playing at the big league level unless somebody that we don't want to get hurt gets hurt. I mean, you don't want anybody to get hurt, but somebody that you really don't want to see get hurt would have to get hurt for Bovver to be able to get up to the big league level for the Orioles at some point this season. Vimel Machine, full last name, if that's how you pronounce it. He hasn't played in the majors since 2022 with the Oakland Athletics. 3 for 3 today with a home run, a double, and 2 RBI. 1 career home run in his big league career. So he hits a home run today, and it was a no-doubter off of his bat. So really nice showing for Machine today. Orioles overall get that victory 7-3. Dylan Beavers came in, had a double where there's a pitch that kind of broke on the inside corner. He had to really get those hands in, and he put the barrel on the ball and laced it down the right field line for a double. So that was nice to see as well. We also saw Samuel Basallo with the new ABS system, the automated ball and strike system. We saw him challenge a ball early in the game, and it got reversed into a strike. So that was cool to see also. Now, if you've been paying attention, in Sarasota, the Orioles don't have that option. And so they're only going to be able to do that in road games. Terry Francona out in Cincinnati, he said that the Reds have opted out of the ABS in spring training because he said, why are we going to strategize for something that we're not actually going to use in the regular season? And he's right. They're not going to implement this in the 2025 regular season. They're trying it out this spring. And if it's successful, if people seem to like it, they'll implement that for 2026 and beyond. But it's not going to be in effect this spring. If it is, I would be absolutely shocked. So I understand where Francona is coming from. They can always work on it in the offseason and next spring training if it is something that gets implemented into actual big league regular season games. But for now, the Reds opting out of that system because it's not part of the regular season this year. So the Orioles, again, they don't have the system in Sarasota, but they will have it on the road at times this spring. And Basallo stealing the strike back for the Orioles today. Today's show brought to you by HelpMyGamblingProblem.org. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit HelpMyGamblingProblem.org for free confidential services. That's 1-800-GAMBLER or visit HelpMyGamblingProblem.org for free confidential services. All right. So we've got, forgive me, I've got a gentleman named Matt that is joining us on the show today. Matt Trigger is going to be joining us. Matt, how you doing, man?
What's going on, Paul? Thanks for having me on, man. Zach told me you needed somebody to fill in, so figure why not.
Hey, man, I greatly appreciate it, Matt. I was supposed to have Brooks Rothschild from Gary Thorne Stole My Lawn Furniture. Last minute, his wife ended up having to stay late at work, so we couldn't hop on. So, Matt, I appreciate you joining the show today. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, what you do sports-wise, and then we'll get rolling along here.
Okay, man. Thank you for the ability to introduce myself to your audience. I am obviously my name is Matt Trigger. I am a Baltimore Ravens content creator for Believe Network with Daniel Wilcox. We have a show, Believe in Ravens, over on their network. We've been doing that for about. This was the first season we did it this past year. Before that, I did an independent Ravens show for um, all Ravens and Orioles content, by myself, and I used to have guests on and stuff like that. And then over on Pigtown Sports, myself and Tim Malarkey and Zach, we all do a Baltimore Orioles show. We just had Mike Boric on the other night, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, I just covered Baltimore sports for Pigtown Sports and for Believe.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had Mike Porter on the show a handful of times.
Mike's a
Hell of
good
a guy
guy.
to talk to. Hell of a nice guy too. One of the better guys in the Baltimore baseball arena. So, Matt, really appreciate you joining the show today. It makes the show a lot easier when I have somebody to bounce stuff off of. So I really appreciate that today. Again, reminding everybody today's show is brought to you by Help My Gambling Problem. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. Now, were you able to watch either of the spring training games this weekend?
I've caught bits and pieces of it. Having a little one and having basketball and having to run around and do errands and stuff. I wasn't able to catch complete games, but I caught the highlights.
All right. We were talking about how Albert Suarez yesterday, inning and two-thirds, threw about 40 pitches, had a couple of walks, gave up about 3 hits. You don't read too much into spring training performances, but what I will tell you is that what I saw from Suarez yesterday is a lot of what I saw from Suarez last year in the games where he would struggle. Struggling with the fastball, of bouncing the curveball, has a hard time finding the strike zone. So then when he does find the strike zone, they put the bat on the ball. A lot of get-me-over pitches. Again, first game of spring training, so you're not reading anything into it, but that was my takeaway from it. It's also nice to see Ramon Laureano get into the game to start the game yesterday and get that RBI single up the middle, and also be able to see Jackson Holliday show off the wheels a little bit, scoring on that base hit from second base. Did you catch any of that?
I did. Jackson looks good on the base path. It's nice to see that he's going to be utilizing his speed the best way he possibly can. I want to see this team run more this year with stolen bases, hit and run, advancing runners. I feel like they didn't play enough small ball the last couple of years, and we got the team for it. We got guys that can hit and move runners over, and I believe Jackson's going to be the key to that, at least offensively, early on in the year. I think that he's going to, provide a lot of that, getting on base, moving, getting runs across the plate for our guys that are hitting behind him. But Suarez, inning and two-thirds, 40 pitches is a little high. I don't really put a whole. I think the spring training is when these guys go to work kinks out. That's what it is. That's what it's for. It's not for anything else. It's not for going out there and give a maximum effort. On February 22nd, February 21st. It's one of those situations where they got to work through their issues and work kinks out and build their stamina up. And I don't put a whole lot of stock into the spring training innings. I just want to see these guys get themselves together and make it out of spring training without any injuries.
For sure. And to that effect, Cade Povich today, he goes out 2 perfect innings pitched, 26 pitches, 15 strikes, 1 strikeout, no walks, no hits, obviously. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been perfect. And so again, you can't read too much into that either, because when we saw Povich has nasty stuff. And even in the games where he didn't seem to pitch very well, you look up and you see 1-2 hits in 5 innings with 4 or 5 walks. The problem with him is not being able to get the ball over the plate effectively. And so with Povich, nice to see him throw 2/3 strikes, or I guess 60% strikes today, not walk anybody. But again, spring training, but it beats the alternative. So we're certainly going to take it. Also nice to see Kobe Mayo, 113-mile-an-hour base hit up the middle off the bat for him to drive home 2 runs in the second inning today. So that was great to see from Kobe Mayo as well. But it's nice to see the hitters get off to a good start. But like you said, the most important thing is these guys getting out of spring training healthy and ready to go for the regular season. At what point do you start paying attention to spring training results and wanting to see something positive?
I mean, I really don't pay attention to spring training until for results driven, watching. So about the last week, maybe the last week and a half before opening day. So maybe in the next 5 or 6 days, I'll really kind of start to hone in and see what we kind of know what this 26-man roster is going to look like. You know
Mm-hmm.
what the 40 is going to mostly look like. Now, the biggest thing that we're watching for isn't who's going to be in the lineup. You pretty much know that third base is going to be Westberg, shortstop's going to be Gunner, second's going to be Jackson, first is going to be Mountcastle, Adley's going to catch. So we know the infield's taken care of. O'Neill and Kerstad and Mullins and Cowser. That's going to be some variation of your outfield and DH.
Right.
O'Hearn sprinkled in there as well. So you kind of have an idea on that side. I'm interested. I'm gonna be looking for what the rotation is going to be because obviously right now Eflin is your by default your one, and Grayson's your two. Morton's most likely going to be our three, and Kramer's going to be your four. So that fifth spot is really going to be up in the air between Suarez, Sugano, and Povich. And you can't
Mm-hmm.
go into. I don't think you can go into the season with 5 right-handed starters.
Right.
Just teams are just going to go left-handed heavy, and they're just going to try and tee off on us. So I really think Povich probably has the advantage just because he's strictly on left-handed pitching. So you got to
Mm-hmm.
figure out whether Sugano is willing to pitch out of the pen. If Suarez is, Suarez obviously will pitch out of the pen. So there's some questions that do need answering on the pitching side. So I'm hoping to get those type of answers in the next week or so.
Yeah, and it's a great point that you bring up because look, that ballpark is designed to get right-handed hitters out, and you don't have a single lefty that's ticketed for your rotation right now. Because Sagano, in my opinion, was brought over here to be in your starting rotation. But I was watching Povich today, and he looked good. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, he was really good in September. And Buck Showalter always said people can be fooled a lot by what they see in spring training and what they see in September. So I'm not going to try. I'm not going to let myself get overly excited about Povich based on what he did in September when he did in his first spring start in 2025. But if he has a really nice spring, he could make it a difficult decision for the Orioles. I think that in their minds, it's the jobs belong to Eflin, Grayson, Morton, Kramer, and Sagano. But Povich and Suarez can have something to say about it. I think Suarez is going to be on this roster regardless, whether it's in the rotation or in the bullpen. I think he's ticketed for the bullpen. Povich can make them have to make a decision, and then if somebody in your bullpen isn't pitching up to snuff right now, or let's say Batista's not quite ready to go on opening day, these problems tend to work themselves out. But you're going to be able to see maybe Sagano be in a relief role if Povich out pitches. And no, what Sagano doesn't. He can get it up to about 93 at times. He's been sitting around 88 to 90 in his bullpen sessions. Pitched really well in his live BP the other day. I think it was on Friday. The first 3 batters that he faced, and he gave up a couple of hard hits after that. But they're more so working on location, not throwing every pitch and trying to pitch it like it's a regular season game. Any worry when it comes to Sagano because he doesn't throw that hard, and because all of his accolades come from the KBO, which is essentially or I'm sorry, the Nippon Professional Baseball League, which is essentially a double A league when you compare it to what's in the big leagues or what's in America, and also it's a different baseball. Any concern there?
Not really, because just based off of the success and the track record of Japanese pitchers transitioning to the majors, they more or less transition well, and I think it has to do with the way that they were taught to play baseball as opposed to American baseball players where everything's about spin rate and velocity and going all out every single pitch where Japanese pitchers more often than not they hit their spots. They're more disciplined. They have a little bit more to give in terms of stamina. They have a little bit more pitches in their repertoire. So I think Sugano is going to going to give us that. I'm not saying he's going to be Shohei. I think that he's going to be, if he can be the 2025 version of Wei Yen Chen.
I've said that too.
If he can be a 2025 Chen, I think we got ourselves a stud for not a lot of money, for what pitchers we're going for on the market. So, yeah, he's 35. I mean, but we also signed Charlie Morton and gave him more money, and Charlie Morton's going to be 42 this year. So
yeah.
At the end of the day, Sugano, he was a stud over there. And I know it might be double A ball, but he might get hit around a little bit here. We play in one of the toughest hitting divisions in baseball. The Yankees always have hitters. The Red Sox always have hitters. The Jays have hitters. And the Rays have hitters. So I'm not going to sit there and expect this man to be Cy Young. So I understand that there's going to be an adjustment, but I'm not buying the hype on Sugano just yet, but I'm more cautiously optimistic than most people.
Sure. And I'm glad that you said, we play in a division where there's a lot of good hitters and a lot of hitters ballparks, because that's what we're going to talk about on the show today. Before we get into that, I want to get to a couple of comments real quick, because you mentioned Charlie Morton, who's going to be 42 years old. Stephen Robinson asked, who do you think is going to start the home opener? I think that it's going to be either, in my opinion, I think Grayson Rodriguez. I think they're expecting him to be they're expecting him to be the ace of this staff this year. I think they're expecting him to take that next step. So if that's the case, I give him the ball just on the opening day in Toronto. I think you should go Grayson, Eflin, Kramer in Toronto, because Kramer's pitched better against Toronto the last few years than he did to start his career. I would have the home opener be Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton's been a big game pitcher in his career. He's won 2 World Series. He won a World Series game on a broken freaking leg. So it's a situation there where he's a veteran that you brought in. You want to show him, you want to pay him the respect that he's due. Let him start the home opener against, I believe it's the Boston Red Sox that following Monday. That's who I would pick. Your thoughts on who should start the home opener?
I agree with you about Morton, in theory, but I think there's something that's going to be at play when considering who's going to be the opening day starter at home. It's going to be Rodriguez, for the simple fact that they have to kind of show they trust him and show they want him around, and his contract is coming up relatively soon. Whether, I'm not sure if it's this year or next year, but if you don't want to give him a chance to try it out there for the home opener, last year was different. We had Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns was starting opening day no matter what. That wasn't a conversation. And I think that I think they're putting a lot of their eggs in the basket of Grayson. So I think that they need to give him the ball on opening day. Even though Morton's a big game pitcher and he's proven it over his long career, I think for the home opener, you got to give the ball to Grayson, just on that principle alone. You want him to be your ace, treat him like your ace.
Yeah, no, and there's merit to that, right? Letting him be, and the fans going to show up regardless. It's opening day. That ballpark's going to be sold out. It's going to be one of a handful of sellouts that they have all year. I do want to say Grayson Rodriguez he's under team control for quite a while, because this is just going to be his 3rd season at the big league level. So he's not arbitration eligible until 2027. He's not a free agent until 2030.
Okay.
So
it seems like he's been here forever.
It does, because we've been waiting for him since he got drafted. When a pitcher's drafted in the first round, you want to see him within the first 2 years. It's also, they've been talking about, there's been a lot of talk about Grayson, where he said he's got no problem with Baltimore, and fans talking about how we're going to lose him and this, that, and the other. But we've still got a ways to go before that ever becomes an issue. But I can understand why people would think that his contract is probably coming up sooner rather than later, because of the comments and the uproar that they caused recently. But we're certainly going to see. I would be absolutely shocked if he's not pitching in one of those first 3 games in Toronto. But I can also understand why they would want to hold him back for the home opener, because fans want to see Grayson Rodriguez pitch. And if you think that if you think he's got the best stuff and is the most talented pitcher in your rotation, you want to see him at that home opener. And that's where it sucks to be opening on the road because you're probably looking to have to start somebody who normally wouldn't be your opening day starter, but he's your opening day starter now. Is there an issue with is my microphone not
No,
coming
no,
through?
no. I got my little one sitting in my feet. I'm just making sure she's
Oh,
okay.
gotcha. All right, so today's show is brought to you by Glenn Clark Radio. If you missed anything from Glenn Clark Radio this week, including conversations with CBS Sports Clark Kellogg, college basketball coaching legend Phil Martelli, and longtime Tassel play-by-play voice Spiro Morekis, find them all now in the Glenn Clark Radio Week interview feature at PressBoxOnline.com. And as always, watch or listen to GCR every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. at PressBoxOnline.com/radio. Or right here on Facebook and YouTube. All right, Matt. So we're going to get into this here. So last week on the show, Zach Moore and I went over the comparison between the Orioles rotation compared to the rest of the American League East. So this week, Matt and I, we're going to compare position players starting with the infield. We're going to start at first base. All right. Orioles, they have Ryan Mountcastle. I think he's going to get the bulk of the starts at first base. He's the best glove, and I think that they moved that wall in left field as much for him as they did for anybody else on that ball club. So with that in mind, I think the Orioles' everyday first baseman is Ryan Mountcastle. Yankees, it's obviously going to be Paul Goldschmidt. Blue Jays, it's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Red Sox, Tristan Casas. And for the Rays, it's going to be Yandy Diaz. So when we look at that, there's one guy who clearly stands out above the others, Matt, and that's Vlad.
Vlad Jr.
Yeah, and he's going to be a free agent at the end of this year. That dude's going to ball out this year. He's going to have one of the best years of his career because he knows that he wants a truckload of money in the offseason. He's going to be probably the marquee bat on the free agent market this coming offseason. So I put him head and shoulders above everybody else. After that, it becomes kind of a little bit of a cluster. You look at Paul Goldschmidt. He's now his third season removed from winning the National League MVP in 2022. He's a Gold Glove caliber first baseman. He's won a few over there in his career when he was with Arizona. The bat has always played, but last year we really saw him slow down. Numbers have been declined the last 2 seasons. Only hit about 240 last year, about 20 in the low 20s for home runs. Is Paul Goldschmidt going to be able to turn back the clock in his one season in New York? A lot of guys seem to be revved up and get the last drop of what they've got when they go to New York.
I mean, I think you might see a little bit of a uptick in his home runs. I mean, he's going to be relatively protected in that lineup. They got a decent lineup, and he's probably going to get the same effect as Aaron Judge, gave to Juan Soto. You could say that Judge benefited from Soto as well, but I think Goldschmidt. I don't know if he's necessarily better than Mountcastle at this point. He's definitely not as good defensively as Ryan Mountcastle is, and I don't want to say that Mountcastle is offensively on the downswing, but I just maybe last year was kind of an anomaly, and he kind of bumps those power numbers back up a tiny bit, but. I give the edge to our guy as opposed to Goldschmidt. I think Goldschmidt is on the downswing. He's older. Even though New York kind of rejuvenates everybody, at least for 1 year, I don't see that being the case where it's an astronomical difference where his average bumps 35 points and he's hitting 275, 280 with like 40 home runs. I don't see that happen. I can see him hitting 30. I mean, the Yankees Stadium is a hitter's ballpark all the way. So I could see that, benefiting Goldschmidt.
Yeah, and look, I've always been a Paul Goldschmidt fan. I think that playing in Arizona, he was one of the most underrated players in the game. We probably should have won a couple more MVPs if he had been playing any place outside of that desert. And I think he's taking it for the whole thing. He's a hell of a baseball player. I'm inclined to believe he can turn back the clock a little bit. Is he going to hit 300 with 35 bombs? Probably not. But if he can hit 270 for them with 25 home runs and play a solid defensive first base, they're getting way more out of him than what they got out of Anthony Rizzo last year. I still don't. I can't put him above Vladdy. I put him neck and neck with Ryan Mountcastle. But I think that Ryan Mountcastle, because he's younger and because that wall's been moved in, I would not be shocked in the least to see Mountcastle have a better year than Goldschmidt. And I would expect him to if it wasn't Paul Goldschmidt. If it was just any run-of-the-mill guy who had the season last year that Goldschmidt had, I'd say Mountcastle head and shoulders. But because it's Paul Goldschmidt, I'm gonna lean towards the veteran there with this one. Tristan Costas with the Red Sox. Look, this guy in 2023, 24 homers. He had an 857 OPS, an on-base percentage of 367. Last year, 337 on-base percentage, 799 OPS. He's a young kid, ton of power there. Has to prove that he can stay on the field. He hasn't played more than 132 games in his career. Missed all but 63 games last year. So missed 99 games last year. Look, he's a good player. Don't know that the glove is that great. Don't know if there's another position for him other than first base. But the bat certainly plays for the Red Sox. And if he's being protected in that order by Rafael Devers and Alex Bregman and Trevor Story, if Trevor Story is right, Tristan Costas could have a sneaky good year.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that they didn't move Devers to first base when they signed Bregman.
I thought they were going to, and Devers is saying absolutely no.
I mean, to be fair, if you're a hell of a first baseman, you get paid. So yeah. I would think that would do Devers wonders in his long-term negotiations for another contract. But I can Costas is okay. I'm not gonna say that he's great by any means. He's got a bat on him, but he's not a very good defensive first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
But again, when you're talking about defensive first base, Mountcastle's a former Gold Glove winner, so it's kind of hard to stack anybody against him when it comes to playing the field. Because I mean, he's one of the most athletic first basemen in Major League Baseball, just based on pure raw athleticism.
Yeah, Mountcastle. I'm always a believer in Ryan Mountcastle. I've been saying every year, it seems like the last 3 years, that I think he's the Orioles version of Austin Riley. Down in is it Austin or Alex Riley? It's Austin Riley. Austin Riley. Down in Atlanta, and he hasn't proven it yet. I think if he's ever going to do it, it's going to be this year because he's got all the advantages working in his favor now. If he doesn't do it this year, I think the Orioles are moving on.
Oh, well, here's the thing. As much as I like Ryan Mountcastle, he was here through most of the rebuild. Him and Seti are the two last guys from the previous regime, and to be honest, they should have moved him for a bat. I mean, for an arm. They should have went and found somebody in Cleveland or Seattle's, rotation or bullpen and gotten some reinforcements there. Mountcastle doesn't fit here long term, and I'm going to say this only in the sense that we have so many of these prospects that are ready, because Mayo's not going to play third base at the major league level.
No.
So if you plan on keeping Mayo and you don't trade him, you got to find some place to play him. You're not going to put him at DH every day, so you got to get him in the field. First base is the only option. He's not an outfielder. He's not a third baseman. He's definitely not a shortstop. So do you put Mayo at first base and then see what you got with him for a couple years? Because me personally, I talked about this on Pigtown Sports with Zach and then on Foul Ball Talk with Tim, that I think we got maybe a year or two before we decide whether we're going to move Adley to first base. I think they would need to see if Basayo is going to be ready by the end of this year or next year, and then if Basayo is your catcher, or you move Basayo to first base, then you got to figure out what to do with Mayo. But Mountcastle can get you more in the immediate time frame than Mayo can, because right now Mayo didn't have a good showing at the major league level. He's still just a prospect.
Yeah, and that's the thing. How much defense are the Orioles willing to sacrifice? And I think that might be the main reason that they didn't trade Mountcastle in the offseason, is because they know that they don't have an ace for their rotation. They know that their bullpen can be really good if Felix Bautista is back being the mountain, but is he going to be back being that guy? So if you're going to have a pitching staff that has the potential to be a little bit less than what you really need to be a true contender, then you better have a good defense behind him. And Ryan O'Hearn, we've seen, he can't play any defensive position very well. He is serviceable in a pinch at both first base and in the corner outfield. But really, and Kobe Mayo, I think that they would have moved him full-time to first base if they fully believed he could handle the position. There's got to be a reason why they're still trying to make something of him at third base. And I don't see it. You don't see it. Most people with eyes don't see him playing third base. So why have they not made that full-time transition over to first base? It must be something they don't like. So Brian Mountcastle is the only guy that they trust defensively over at first base, and I think that that's what they're looking at.
Well, when you look at it, the way this team's operated, they sacrifice offense in the name of defense because there's no reason that Mountcastle and Mullins should be starting on this baseball team. If you go by offensive numbers, your starting first baseman shouldn't be hitting 13 home runs a year.
Right. And his backup isn't much better as far as power.
And you bring back O'Hearn. I know everybody loves O'Hearn for what he provided for us for a couple years off the bench and the solid pinch hitting and all that. But to me, the roster spot for O'Hearn, you're potentially not going to have one for Kjerstad. Kjerstad can do everything O'Hearn can do, but better. He's got more power. He has the ability to play the corner outfields and first base. So I feel like you brought back O'Hearn because you weren't sure what you were going to do, but now that you've added what seemingly 4 or 5 outfielders in the offseason, where does Kjerstad fit? Because if you're looking at it right now, I don't think the Orioles are going to carry 6 outfielders on their roster.
Right,
they're not going to.
They're not.
You didn't pay O'Neill to be a platoon guy. Everybody keeps on talking about O'Neill being a platoon. O'Neill's not going to be a platoon.
They said as soon as they signed him, he's here to play every day.
Yeah. So as long as he's healthy, that middle linebacker playing left field is going to be out there every night. With the occasional off, the occasional break night. But if he's your left fielder, Kowser's going to be your right fielder, or vice versa. Mullins is in center field, but Kowser should be center fielder. There's no reason Kowser shouldn't be starting in center field. He's faster than Mullins. The only thing is we don't know if he's as good defensively over a long period of time in center field as Mullins. And then in right field, it should be Kjerstad, but it's not going to be because you're going to have to put O'Neill or Kowser over there if you're going to start Mullins. So that leaves DH open to either Mayo, Kjerstad, or O'Hearn. So it's muddled with O'Hearn staying on this baseball team.
So my opinion on Ryan O'Hearn got me blocked by Ryan O'Hearn because a lot of people love Ryan O'Hearn, and I don't dislike the guy, and I think that he was a great reclamation project each of the last 2 seasons. But the fact remains, when he started playing every day when Mountcastle got hurt last year, his last 72 games from July 4th to the end of the season, he hit .231 with a .311 on base percentage, and he hit 5 home runs, playing just about every day. He's 32 years old this season, and you're giving him $8.5 million to block a prospect who's potentially better than him and a hell of a lot cheaper. Yeah. I think that they picked up that option on him, thinking that maybe that they could go with Mayo, Kjerstad would prove something, or that they could trade, or so they could maybe trade Mountcastle, like you were saying, and then maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was that they just couldn't find a trade partner for Ryan Mountcastle because the other team's got to be willing to deal with it. You know,
I don't think teams were not willing to trade for Mountcastle. I just believe, me personally, I don't have any inside knowledge to it. I don't have anybody telling me anything on an off-the-record kind of basis, so I'm going to just start with that. But I truly believe the Orioles probably overvalued Mountcastle in terms of what the defense is, and what they thought they could get for Mountcastle was probably not what teams were willing to give up. We're not in a position now where we're a rebuilding squad. We won 80 games, and we're on the brink, maybe a year or two away from greatness. We've won 81, 101, and 91. the last 3 years. The rebuild's over. We're a good baseball team. Teams aren't just going to give us an above average to elite middle relief pitcher or closer or starter for Mountcastle. So, or they wanted Mountcastle, but they said, oh, well, we're going to need Basayo or we're going to need Westberg or we're going to need something to sweeten the spot. Mountcastle is not good enough to carry the load for a trade for an above average arm prospect. I believe that we missed the boat on trading him last year.
Yeah.
When his value was, still somewhat high around around the trade deadline, you missed the opportunity to get rid of him. And to be fair, there's 3 guys on this team that I don't see being here past this year, and it's the guys we've been talking about. Mountcastle, Mullins, and O'Hearn. And the fan base grows an attachment to these guys. They love Seti, they love O'Hearn, they love Mountie. Mountie did the home run chain and showing his grills and the home run bong and all that good stuff. But you got all these prospects that you sucked for years to draft in these high draft picks, and now they're all ready, or they might be ready, and you got to find that out. And how do you find that out if you don't play them every day?
Right.
Right. The excuses are over. We've won almost 200 games the last 2 years. The excuses are over, and you've got to make some tough decisions. You can't hoard prospects. This isn't this is you can't have. Who cares if Bowie and Norfolk win championships? I don't give a shit about those. Excuse my language, but I don't care about them winning the Pacific League or the Atlantic League or whatever the hell they play in. I want to see if Kobe Mayo can hit at the major league level and give him more than 17 at bats. You know what I'm saying? I want to see if Kjerstad is going to be a 35, 40 home run guy, but you can't do that when you're giving him 1 at bat a week.
Yeah, when they were talking about Kjerstad a couple of weeks ago, Brandon Hyde and Mike Elias, they said he's going to get every opportunity to play a big role on this team this year. And then in a statement the next day, Brandon Hyde said, if we're facing a righty, it's probably going to be a combination of Mountcastle and O'Hearn between first base and DH. Well, right there, you're talking about if you're facing the righty, where do you fit in Kjerstad? Because you're going to play O'Neill every day. So for me, Kjerstad has to play a huge role on this team because you're looking to replace the production of Anthony Santander, number 1. And number 2, you need that contingency plan for the inevitability that Tyler O'Neill gets hurt because he spent 14 trips on the IL in his 7 seasons at the big league level. You're not going to tell me this guy's suddenly going to post up 140, 150 times this season. It's just not going to happen. And so if you have Brian O'Hearn's inclusion on this roster, it makes 0 sense. It makes 0 sense because you have guys who are younger, cheaper, and better. And then you look at the fact that you've got to find a way to get Kobe Mayo because he's number 14 prospect in baseball, number 14 overall prospect in all of baseball for a reason. The power plays. 44 bats last year is not enough to see if this dude can play at the big league level. And we saw what Jackson did, and we're expecting Jackson to come out and have a big year this year. Mike Trout in 2011, he sucked at the big league level, and then he finished second in MVP voting in 2012. So these guys, it takes a little bit of time to get seasoned to the big league level. You're never going to get seasoning for Kjerstad and for Kobe Mayo if you have a guy like Brian O'Hearn on the roster blocking them from getting to the big league level. 2021, guys like Brian O'Hearn, Ramon Arias, I would convince myself these guys can hit 270 with 25 home runs as an everyday player for this team. It's 2025. The Orioles have won 295 games in 3 seasons. That's over 91 wins a year. This is a ball club that's here. They have an opportunity to go win some championships or at least get damn close to winning them. This isn't the time to have retreads taking up roster spots. It's nothing against Ryan O'Hearn as a man or even as a player. He's 32 years old.
It's not.
And there's somebody younger and better. It's
not personal. And what chaps my ass about this whole thing. I don't know if you've ever really watched our show over on Pigtown Sports, but I am not a Hyde guy.
I can't stand that.
I believe that he's a good rebuild manager, but now you've got the pieces in place and you can't be managing the way that you've been managing. He hasn't won a playoff game. He's 0-7 the last 2 years. I Hyde. I don't know if it's like a Baltimore sports coaching playbook that they read out of to piss off this fan base and the people in this city, because they say a whole lot of nothing every single time they talk. There's a lot of words, but there's no substance. It's very shallow. Hardball's the same way. That's just the way it is. That's the way it's always going to be. So I don't put any stock into what Hyde says at all, because I'm in the minority with this, and I've caught some flack from listeners across a couple different platforms. But Hyde's lost that locker room last year, and I believe he is the reason we lost in the playoffs. I believe that there's a reason why we faltered the last month and a half, 2 months of the season. I hear everybody saying that he wasn't out there pitching and he wasn't out there hitting and he wasn't out there doing X, Y, and Z. But you let that locker room look like a frat house, and you chased away Corbin Burns. I believe the way that was going, Corbin wasn't signing here no matter what. You could have offered him $300 million over 7 years, and he still would have went home to Arizona. Yeah. So I don't believe a goddamn word that Hyde or Elias say, because we heard liftoff 2 years ago, and if you call liftoff not signing Corbin Burns after trading away Hall and Ortiz, if you call that
and a competitive balance pick,
yeah, and then if you call replacing Burns with Morton and Sugano liftoff, I don't want to be a part of that liftoff. That's a crash and burn right there.
Matt, I feel people that listen to this show, they're probably laughing right now, because you and I, like what you said about Brandon Hyde is almost verbatim to what I've been saying about Brandon Hyde since 2022. I believe he single-handedly kept the Orioles out of the playoffs in 2022. They had a golden opportunity. The Tampa Bay Rays lost 12 of their final 16 games, and they only won one time on a day that the Orioles – I'm trying to think. I think the Orioles only won like 3 times on the day that Tampa Bay lost in that final 16-game stretch. And I watched as Brandon Hyde played Rougned Odor at third base after he said, "I'm not comfortable playing third base." I watched as he left Felix Bautista on the mound to hurt his knee while throwing over 30 pitches, while inevitably giving up a game-winning hit to Kyle Tucker, when you had a healthy and ready and rested DL Hall in the bullpen. This is back in 2022. To come in to face the lefty. The next day, in the exact same situation, he brought in DL Hall to face Kyle Tucker with the bases loaded, and he blew him away, struck him out. And he left it. And like they had an opportunity to sweep Houston in that final series against Houston that season, and they ended up splitting that series because of the decisions that Brandon Hyde made. Brandon Hyde single-handedly kept his ball club out of the playoffs in 2022. He managed them to 3 consecutive losses in the bullpen, using his bullpen too early. Game 1, they should have won Game 1 of that playoff series. Bradish gives up 2 runs in 4 2/3 innings, and you're yanking him to bring in Jacob Webb, and he immediately gives up a home run. Then he brings in Jacob Webb with the bases loaded in Game 2. He immediately gives up a grand slam. After Brian Baker, who had no business being on a playoff roster, walked the bases loaded. Brandon Hyde single-handedly kept the Orioles out of the playoffs in 2022 and single-handedly kept them from winning ball games in 2023 and 2024 in the postseason. Don't even get me started on pitching to Bobby Witt with the go-ahead run on base in back-to-back games. Brandon Hyde is I can't stand him. I think
he's a good rebuild manager. When you give him a 4A baseball team at the major league level, he can make chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. They had the opportunity to hire Terry Francona. Francona wins us a World Series with this ball club.
I think so.
If Francona, if we would have fired Hyde, Francona wins us a championship.
Yeah.
And then if everybody hasn't seen the writing on the wall yet, the way that the coaching staff has played out, there's 2 moving pieces that I want people that your followers and your fans to think about. Let it marinate. Who do they invite to camp this year to be an assistant coach?
Who are you talking about? You talking about Adam Jones?
Adam Jones.
Yeah.
He's back in the organization. He's an instructional assistant, but
he's assistant to the GM.
Right. So there's number 1. That's number 1. Number 2, who's the new bench coach?
Robinson Chirinos or Buck Britton?
Buck Britton.
Mm-hmm.
Buck Britton is now on the Major League coaching staff. Buck Britton is going to be our manager by mid-June, late June, if Buck doesn't get his shit together. Because Buck Britton is the one coach on this entire franchise, organization top to bottom, that has had success with Adley, Gunnar, Westberg, Jackson Holiday, Mayo. He's had success with all of them at the minor league level.
Won a Triple A championship in 23.
Yep, they love Buck Britton. So Hyde's got to know that wasn't a Hyde move. That was an organizational move. Hyde's not bringing somebody up from the minors that can potentially take his job. So there's two people that are in-house right now to where if they want to go the former player route, it's Adam Jones. If they want to go somebody in the system, it's Buck Britton. But I believe Hyde's leash is about that long this year.
Yep. You know what? I agree with you, and I'll tell you that I think that the player manager, the foreign player to be a manager, I don't think it's Adam Jones. I think it's Robinson Chirinos. Robinson Chirinos had Adley finished second in Rookie of the Year voting in 2022 when Robinson Chirinos was his backup catcher, and there's many people in the game that think Chirinos is a future big league manager. And I look at that and I say, they brought him in because they want Adley to be the best catcher he can be. They also think that he is a future big league manager. But Britton, the rumors are they were going to lose him if they didn't put him on the major league staff, and they didn't want to lose him. That tells me something. You cannot convince me that 18 hours after the Orioles get swept in the playoffs for the second straight year, that they come out and they give Hyde a vote of confidence, say he's coming back next year to manage. You can't tell me there wasn't a conversation between Meidel, Elias, Eve Rosenbaum, and Brandon Hyde, where they said, "Look, if you don't get some playoff wins next year, you're out of here." There's no chance that Brandon Hyde brought Buck Britton and Robinson Chirinos onto his staff. There's no chance that Brandon Hyde fired his entire coaching staff. That was a front office move. 100%.
Absolutely, I agree with you. No doubt.
One more to your point about Corbin Burns. I said it back in August that Corbin Burns is not re-signing here because he does not like Brandon Hyde. I think that Corbin Burns could not stand Brandon Hyde.
I'm gonna give you one more caveat to the Burns thing. If anybody wants to go back and look, I think 6 out of the last 8 starts Corbin Burns made. Check out who his catcher was.
Was that
It was McCann. It was not Adley. So if your franchise catcher isn't catching your ace, there's something wrong there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it might not have been major. I might have been overlooking it, but I'm pretty sure 6 out of the last 8. I might be wrong on the numbers specifically, but McCann was getting a lot of starts on Burns pitching days.
So Burns made 32 starts. I just saw this the other day, and this is a lot of those. I hate to say it because I've had them on my show, and I don't have anything against the Orioles writers, but I do think that they try to find ways to turn something that seems pretty obvious into something else and try and pull the wool over people's eyes. And
job.
Right. And what I see there is when they came out the other day, I saw it from somebody. A lot of people think McCann solely caught Corbin Burns, which he did towards the end of the year. You're absolutely right. They're like, but Adley caught him 17 of his 32 starts. But that was because the first 2/3 of the season, it was Brandon Hyde putting Adley in there, not thinking about who's the best catcher for those. Because it was when they were talking about how Gary Sanchez was catching Sugata the other day, and because Gary Sanchez has called Japanese pitchers before, he speaks the language, and they were saying, people were asking, is Sanchez going to be his personal catcher? And I was like, no, we don't really do that. If somebody needs rest, this, that, and the other, but there's no specific catchers for specific pitchers. Everybody's going to catch everybody. To me, that's them trying to. That's a Brandon Hyde thing. If your best starting pitcher needs this specific catcher, then that's a catcher that he needs. That's the absolute catcher that should be catching that pitcher. If you want to DH, I hate the idea of DHing your backup catcher or your starting catcher with the other. But having both your catchers in the lineup on the same day, if one of them gets hurt, what the hell are you going to do?
But the thing is, Adley hits almost 60 points higher at DH than he does behind the plate.
That's 100%.
So
100%
So, so to me, you drafted Adley on the offense, and obviously the defense was there. I don't think he's nearly as good defensively as they hyped him up to be. But if Adley's going to hit 270, 280 as a DH, you make him a DH and you let him just tee off. Don't even worry about, you Adley can DH the next 15 years.
Yeah,
you
can play first base.
I mean, you could give him the first baseman's mitt and let him get out there once a week. But Adley's a damn near 300 hitter at DH. You DH him. You need Adley hitting 280, 300. That's what you drafted him 1 overall. It wasn't like he was your first round pick in the draft and you got him at 5 or 10 or 11 or whatever, but you drafted him 101. That's a conversation stopper right there. You got to do it. So I don't believe I don't believe a whole lot of what Hyde says. I have a hard time with it. I have a hard time believing Hyde most of what he says because a lot of it's bullshit. A lot of it is smoke screens. So that's where I'm at with him.
It's nice to talk to somebody who has the same standpoint on Brandon Hyde as I do, because there's not a lot of people. I mean, I saw it this past season. A lot more people jumped on that Brandon Hyde is not a good manager bandwagon, but it's still you still have most of those people out there saying Brandon Hyde's not throwing the pitches, he's not hitting, he's not fielding, but he's making the decisions on who to bring in and who to play to do those things and making the wrong moves at the wrong times, in my opinion. You mentioned something about draft picks. I want to get into that here in just a second. Before I do, I want to remind everybody today's show is brought to you by the latest edition of Press Box, which is available now. On the cover, Orioles owner David Rubenstein sits down with a Q&A with Stan the Fan Charles and Glenn Clark. And also, we meet new Oriole Tyler O'Neill, as well as college cross players from around the state. You can find the new issue all throughout the region, including at 60 Royal Farm stores. You can read it all at PressBoxOnline.com. All right, so you mentioned Adley was your first overall pick. Jackson Holliday was your first overall draft pick. Colton Cowser was a 5th overall draft pick. Heston Kjerstad was a number 2 overall draft pick. When you're looking at it, number 1 overall draft pick, Adley Rutschman, had like a 572 OPS the second half of the season last year. Colton Cowser had 2 months where he tore the cover off the ball last year, 4 months where he was a below replacement level hitter. Jackson Holliday hit 188. And then Heston Kjerstad, he was hitting fine until he got drilled in the back of the head with a 97-mile-an-hour fastball, and then he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn after that. Now you're in a situation, is Holliday going to play every day? Is Adley – he should. He absolutely should, but there's a lot of people questioning if he can handle it, despite the fact that he's only 21 years old. I think it's weird for people thinking he's a bust already. Adley. Is Adley close to the player he was the second half or close to the player he was the first half? Is Heston going to get an opportunity to play every day? He should. And is he going to produce at the big league level? Can Colton Cowser prove that he can do anything other than hit a fastball as a big league hitter? You have those 4 top 5 draft picks that are on your major league roster this year that should be getting significant playing time. You have question marks next to every single one of them. Gunnar was the first pick in the draft in the second round the same year that they drafted Adley. So you really look at the best players on your team should be those 4 dudes, and they all have question marks. So when it comes to drafting, have the Orioles really been that successful at making these draft picks? I know that COVID threw a wrench in the spokes of a lot of things. It took a year away from Adley, Kjerstad, Westberg, and all those guys. And in Kjerstad's case, he also had myocarditis after that. Then he had a strained hamstring after that. So it took him a while to get back on the field. How good are they actually at drafting when you have those big of question marks for those top 5 picks?
I really think a lot of these question marks can be eliminated if they just simply let these guys play. This isn't rocket science. They're making this shit analytical, and they're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Mm-hmm. You'll know what you got if you let them play. You'll know what Kjerstad can do if you give him at bats. You know what Mayo will be able to do if you give him at bats. You'll know what Jackson will be able to do if you play him every day and see the production that he has. Mm-hmm. Jackson's not a platoon guy. He's 21 years old.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here? You drafted him number 1 overall. So what are we talking about?
I'll tell you that with Jackson, and again, you're not wishing injuries on anybody, but the best thing that could have happened for Jackson Holiday for 2025 is Jorge Mateo not being ready to start the season on the active roster, because guaranteed, if Mateo was ready to go on opening day, Jackson Holiday would be playing second base against righties, and Mateo would be playing second base against lefties.
Mateo shouldn't be on this baseball team. You need to put guys on this. I understand Mateo's fast and he's another fan favorite. And then he has these moments where he's a power guy and he's a speed guy, and then he can't hit his body weight.
Mm-hmm.
So he's I put him in that same group as Mullins, Mountcastle, and O'Hearn. Why are you? This is like that's like their Hyde's core 4. Like they gotta be here no matter what. Okay, okay, Mateo is fast, but are they forgetting that Holiday and Gunnar are probably almost as fast as he is?
Westberg's fast too.
Westberg's fast. Kowser runs like a gazelle. Like, come on, man. What are you doing? Why are you doing this?
I think
a lot of these questions could be answered if you just put these guys in the lineup every day. You drafted all these guys high in consecutive years in a row. Put them in the lineup. Let them produce. You got to let them sink or swim. If they sink, then you make the change.
Yeah.
But having these aging veterans in arbitration years on this team is not doing us any favors.
It's factual statements all across the board there. With Mateo, see, I'm a believer that there's a spot on any big league roster for a guy like Jorge Mateo, provided that you use him the right way. And the way that you use him the right way is as a defensive replacement, as a pinch runner who plays maybe once or twice a week if it happens to be a lefty starting on the mound for the opposing team, because he does mash against left-handed pitching. The way that the Orioles use Jorge Mateo, somehow, some way, that dude ends up getting significant playing time every single year. And what you talked about earlier, the Orioles have proven that they're with playing Cedric Mullins every day and playing Ryan Mountcastle every day, that they are choosing defense over offensive production. They're doing the exact same thing with Jorge Mateo, because the only reason Mateo played every single day in 2023, in 2022, and in 2023, and then he was playing every day at second base in 2024 is because of his glove. It's 100% because of his glove. It's not even so much his speed, because he had 3 stolen bases after June 1st last year. 3 stolen bases after June 1st. He didn't hurt until August. So
but nobody on this team was running, so I'm not even going to attribute that. I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock. Nobody on the team was running. Right. This team was horrible at advancing runners. They just didn't do it. This team for the last 3 or 4 years, and I can honestly go back into the dog days of the end of Showalter's run. This team lives and dies by the home run. Doesn't matter what they do. This team lives and dies by the long ball. And everybody else in the league, every 29 of the teams know that about Baltimore.
Yeah, it's true. You don't have, and that's where it's kind of like a confounding thing, right? Because you look at guys like Gunnar Henderson and Jackson Holiday and Jordan Westberg, and I firmly believe that all of those guys can just put the bat on the ball and hit the ball all over the field, and they can get the job done with runners and scoring. Westberg's an animal. He's a natural born run producer, and I think that that's a guy who should be hitting probably middle of the order for the Orioles. He needs to be hitting top 4 for this ball club, because he's one of their best hitters, especially with guys on base. I'm looking at it. Jackson Holiday, I think he should be your lead. I think he's going to be your leadoff hitter. If Brandon Hyde doesn't get it in his own way, he should be the Orioles leadoff hitter by June. I think he's going to be that good, because Gunnar, yeah, it's nice that Gunnar can lead off a game with a home run 12 times a year. But Gunnar should be hitting third on this ball club. He should absolutely be hitting third. And Jackson Holiday, with the speed he's got and with his ability to drive the ball all over the field, Holiday should be hitting first.
I don't know if honestly, until Jackson proves that he can be a consistent leadoff hitter, I think you got to put Kowser in leadoff.
I can see that.
Kowser should be your leadoff, because at that point in time, leading off, a pitcher's not going to think about, I got to give him the hook, first, second, and third. You're going to have to pitch to him. You're going to have to throw let these dudes throw to Kaiser. He does damage when you got to throw him gas. So he's got speed. He's good on the base path. Let him lead off. The top 4 hitters on this ball team should be like the 1 through 4 should be Kaiser, Westberg, Gunnar, and Adley in some form or fashion.
Okay.
That should be your 1 through 4. I'm not saying that has to be absolutely it, but Westberg should be batting second or third. You know, he's athletic, he can run, and he's a right-handed bat. Or you make him your cleanup guy. Mountcastle can hit 5 or 6. Adley should be hitting in the 2 or the 3 hole, and Gunnar should be hitting third or cleanup. So you can rotate. That should be rotational right there.
What about O'Neill?
What O'Neill are you getting?
And that's a great question. Does O'Neill hit in the top 4 against lefties, and does he hit 6 against righties?
You could bat him cleanup against lefties, and you can have him bat 5 or 6 against right-handed hitting. As long as, but I mean, O'Neill, if he's healthy, O'Neill shouldn't hit anything below 6 in the lineup every single night. So that 4, 5, 6 should be his sweet spot, right there. And then Mountcastle should be in that 4, 5, 6, and so should Kjerstad. You know,
they have such a great ability to have just a solid 1 through 9, where you could potentially see a guy like Mountcastle hitting 7. You know,
yeah, and Mountcastle's a good 7. That's a good 7 hole right there.
Yeah, for me, I look at a guy like Gunnar Henderson, and I think Gunnar Henderson should be your 3-hole hitter from day one. And the reason I think that, a lot of people will sit there and say, well, when the Orioles put him in the 3-hole last year, he struggled. Well, they put him in the 3-hole to try and find a solution for how poor their offense was doing at that point in time. And Gunnar, the one knock on his game, at least from my perspective, is that he shrinks in big moments. I think he puts too much pressure on himself to be the face of this franchise and be the guy to pull his team out of the dumps when they're playing poorly. He puts too much pressure on himself, shrinks in the big moment. Gunnar is that aspect of his game away from being an absolute top of the game superstar, beyond the shadow of a doubt. You start him in the 3-hole from day one, he gets the confidence. Batting in that 3-hole, I think he takes off and has it's hard to say have a career year when you're 24 years old and you're in your 4th big league season, but I think he comes through and has a career year this year if you put him in that 3-hole. And I don't think you see him suddenly stop hitting home runs like he did in the second half last year. Gunnar should be in the 3-hole to start the year. I can get on board with Kaiser batting leadoff. I am a firm believer that leadoff is Jackson Holliday's spot in the lineup in the future. Like you said, he's got to prove it. He's got to prove it. That's why I don't think you give it to him to start the year. But I think
March 27th, I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
June 1st. If Jackson's hitting 275, 270, even 260, I'll give him as low as if he's middling around that 260 to 275 average range, and his on base percentage is high, and he has a couple steals, I would then consider reshuffling the lineup and bumping everybody down a spot or two, and having Jackson lead off. But I'm of the belief, unless Adley has the year that he thinks that people are thinking he's going to, Westberg needs to be batting second.
Okay.
I firmly believe Westberg should be batting second, and he drives runs in, and he can run. That's a perfect number 2 hitter. Adley is a good number 2 hitter when he's DHing. Adley's not a good number 2 hitter when he's catching. So you can have Adley at 2, you can have Adley at 5. But O'Neill and Gunnar, like those 5 guys should be in there somehow. You could have Gunnar bat 3, O'Neill clean up, Adley batting in the 5-hole. You could have Adley batting 2, Gunnar batting 3, O'Neill batting 4, Kjerstad bat 5, and you could have Westberg hitting 6. You know, it could really, you could chop it up any kind of way, just based on the simple fact that it all depends on how Jackson Holliday hits in the early part of the season. If he's not hitting that well, but he's hitting well enough to stay the starting second baseman, but he's not hitting well enough to lead off games, Kaiser, Westberg, Gunnar, that's your 1 through 3. O'Neill can be cleaned up. Adley's your 5. You got 5 really good hitters right there. And then if you have Kerstad batting 6, come on now, like that.
They have a really good, really young roster. I look at it, and I don't mind the idea of Westbrook hitting second. In his career, he's got a 312 on base percentage, 311 in 2023, 312 in 2024. He can hit the ball to all fields and with power to all fields, so he has the ability to hit behind runners from the 2-hole. But I want to see this dude start to walk more. I mean, he has 38 walks in 175 career games. And he's too good of a player to not walk significantly more than that. I want to see his own base percentage, his own base ability go higher before I can say that guy can hit second.
If Gunnar, I mean, if Westberg gets that down, or just gets on base more, period. Now you have Kowser and Westberg on the base path, and you got Gunnar coming up. To me, you got speed all over the place, and then you got a power hitter. And then if those 3 get on base, or a combination of those 3 get on base, then you got O'Neill and Adley coming up. Okay, this is going to be run producing, because Adley can hit for power and for average. And then if O'Neill's out there just mashing everybody, you might not want to pitch to O'Neill. And O'Neill's got a decent set of wheels. He's not fast by any means, but the dude's a freak of nature. You utilize that that athleticism.
The team speed that they have here is ridiculous. They have to utilize that speed so much more, which is why I did like that Brandon Hyde said, I want to steal more bases this year. I want more hits, get guys over, get guys in. You have to utilize the team speed because it's one of the team's greatest strengths. And they stole 98 bases last year, and I was shocked. I thought they stole less than that because I just don't think they run nearly enough.
That requires him to make managerial decisions that benefit that.
Yeah, that's exactly true. Exactly true. Today's show has been brought to you by County Sports Zone. Find every score from every high school sporting event all year long at countysports.zone. Proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Matt, it came out the other day that the Orioles offered Anthony Santander a 3-year deal right before he signed with the Toronto Blue Jays. He turned it down because he was looking for 5 years, maybe I think a little bit more average annual value. I like Anthony Santander. If he had accepted that contract from the Orioles, I would have been able to wrap my head around it, and I would have gotten on board with it. But I will tell you, I am glad that he's not here because Anthony Santander third in a Brandon Hyde lineup. And I just don't like that. That dude is a 6-hitter. He's a 6-hitter who hit third for Brandon. Just a 5-hitter who hit third for Brandon Hyde, 307 career on base percentage. And that's the only reason that I didn't want him. I love Anthony Santander, but you can't tell me that a guy that hits 230 with a 307 on base percentage is a 3-hitter in any big league lineup. And he was for the Baltimore Orioles, which is a really big reason why I struggled so mightily on offense down the stretch last year. What are your thoughts on the idea that the Orioles did offer him a 3-year deal right before he signed with Toronto?
I'm sure they did just to say they could offer it, but they knew he was gone. When you signed Tyler O'Neill, you knew Santander was gone. So I don't even know what the entertainment of a contract offer was. It's okay to acknowledge the fact that Santander isn't an Oriole anymore. I love Tony Taters. I thought that he gave us some exhilarating moments as fans, and he was clutch in a few situations. But the dude can't play when it's cold outside, and he is terrible in September and October. And that's when you need players to at least be semi, decent in crunch time. So he's also another one of those guys where he's hitting a long ball or he's getting out. We got enough of those guys. And if Toronto wants to give him $90 million over 5 years, okay, go take that, buddy. Secure generational wealth for your family. I'll never knock these guys going and getting paid. I'll never knock it. You can't knock it. It's impossible to knock that. So I'm okay with what Santander did. I know he didn't want to leave. But if you have Santander on this team, again, you have another 30-plus-year-old veteran taking away a spot from a guy that probably needs to be at the major league level. If Santander's here, Mayo or Kerstad doesn't make the team.
Right.
They start in Norfolk. I think any of those two starting in Norfolk is an absolute disservice to their growth. because both of those guys have nothing to prove at the minor league level. They need
Right.
to add major league at bats against major league hitting. And you can't. I hate the idea of letting these guys take baby steps. This is the AL East.
Mm-hmm.
You got
You got to know what you have.
You got bulldogs all over the place in the AL East. This isn't you. It's not like you're playing in the AL Central where you can kind of let guys get their feet wet against the White Sox and against the Twins and against whoever, the Guardians. This is a tough division, and you need guys that are going to have to either step up to the plate and play or not.
Mm-hmm.
But keeping them in Norfolk, I don't want to see on Twitter Kobe Mayo hitting a 480-foot home run off of some guy that's never going to make the majors.
Right.
Like, come on.
What's that doing for his game?
It's not doing anything.
Hitting somebody that he's already proven he can hit. I agree.
But Tony would have hindered that. The only way I would have been okay with Santander coming back is if they would have traded Mountcastle and made Santander the first baseman. I would have been okay with that because then, or if you say that we're putting Santander in right field, you spend all off season giving Heston Kjerstad reps at first base, just telling him go get a first baseman mitt and then practice there, train there all off season, all of November, all December, all January, and then be ready to take first base reps the minute you get to camp.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been okay with that, but they insisted on keeping Santander in right field and DH, and then you still have Mountcastle, you still have Mullins, you still have O'Hearn. Like, no, he's right where he needs to be, away from the Orioles.
I agree. A lot of people, and it's like you said, fans get attached to these players in Baltimore. Fans loved Ruth Neto-Dor and Adam Frazier because they got a handful of big hits each in their 1 year here. But those guys were not good baseball players by the time they were in Baltimore, right? Anthony Santander, love him. His personality is infectious. He retrained himself to train in the off season so that he could be able to last for 150 games a year. He taught himself English. Infectious personality. Loved that he was here. We're at a point now where you cannot justify giving a 31-year-old power or nothing baseball player the $20 million a year, $25 million a year to get on base at 307 football hitting in the 3-hole free ball. And while getting out in some big moments when the team just needs a fly ball and you can't put the bat on the ball. I'm with you that Santander loved having him here, but the time was now for him to move on and get Kjerstad those reps, get Mayo those reps.
You need guys that are going to elevate you to the next level, not just in 2025, but 2026, 27, 28, 29. That's guys like Mayo, Kjerstad, Holiday. I'm just, like, you got to get these guys in the lineup and having guys hang up. Like, there's no reason Ramon Urias is on this team other than the fact that he's your super infield utility. He can play everywhere on the infield part of the diamond, but there's no reason that we had this many veterans in the lineup and on the hitting side of the 13, of the 26. It just it feels crazy to me that your bench isn't consisting of Mayo, Kjerstad, Dylan Beavers could probably be major league ready this year, if not mid-year. I mean, you got to see what you got with these guys down in the minors too. Like, people forget, like, we're talking about the big prospects and the big names. People are forgetting you still got Judd Fabian, you still got Enrique Bradfield Jr., you still got Beavers, you got Honeycutt, you got all these guys down in the minors, and it's like, where are they going?
Right. You got a lot of guys who are going to need big league playing time coming up sooner rather than later.
Exactly.
And Ramon Urias, again, it's just like Jorge Mateo. There's a spot on a big league roster for him if he's used correctly. And he was big for the Orioles when Westbrook got hurt. He didn't completely replace the production you're getting out of Jordan Westbrook, but he carried this team offensively for a 3 or 4 week stretch before he had to have before he rolled his ankle there in September. But Ramon Urias playing 4 or 5 days a week when you've got Jordan Westbrook and Jackson Holiday on your roster, that just can't happen. And this is the type Brandon Hyde, manager, who plays those guys because he trusts his veterans probably more than he really should.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right, Paul. And I agree with you, man. Like, this is refreshing that I'm doing a show or, being a guest on a show where my sentiments are I'm not necessarily saying that I'm happy you're agreeing with me, but my sentiments are echoed that I'm not the only person out there that's stepping in front of a microphone that is saying this stuff. And some of this stuff is tough because a lot of Birdland loves these guys and they don't want to see through the orange colored glasses that these guys aren't good for this baseball team, short term or long term.
Yeah. I get attacked, man. And that's part of having a sports personality on social media, is that people are gonna love you, and people are gonna absolutely hate you, and they're gonna spew vitriol at you.
The only thing I ever tell those people, I'm sorry to cut you off, Paul. I swear, I'm so sorry. The only thing I tell them, I was like, when I tell people that question my stance on baseball, I'll say this: I'm a diehard Orioles fan, but I'm not an analytics guy. I hate analytics. I think it's ruined football. It's ruined baseball. But I'm a football guy first and foremost. That's my passion. But I just have a passion for the Orioles, so that's why I do this. But if you have if you know so much more than me and you have a higher opinion and you value what you're saying, get off the comments and then go buy all this stuff and buy your own StreamYard or Restream and then do this yourself.
Yeah,
that's all I say. And this is more vulnerable than anybody will ever know. We leave ourselves wide open to all types of criticism because just simply for the fact that we have an unpopular opinion.
Yeah. And the thing is, I get called negative about this stuff all the time. I get called negative about the Orioles. I'm not being negative. Negative are those people that are sitting there saying the Orioles aren't going to make the playoffs this year. They're a trash team. They did nothing this offseason. I'm not sitting there saying that. I'm sitting there telling you that Ryan O'Hearn has no business being on this ball club. I'm telling you that Jorge Mateo should not be playing 100 games at second base in 2025. That's not being negative. That's being realistic about the talent that the Orioles have and the talent that's being blocked by having these guys play on a regular basis. I don't believe that the ball club is the best that it can be with the decisions that Brandon Hyde makes on a regular basis. And until I see him make decisions to make the ball club better day in and day out, I'm going to shout from the mountaintop until I go hoarse.
I'm going to reference something you said earlier in the show, Paul. We have almost 300 wins the last 3 years. And what do we have to show for it?
0 playoff wins.
No playoff wins. If you would have told me 5 years ago the Orioles are going to rattle off nearly 300 wins in 3 seasons, I'm expecting. If you would have told me this in 2020, I'm expecting that we have a World Series in those 3 years. And then you see,
it's 275 wins.
It's 275. Okay, but if this fan base has Stockholm syndrome anyway, we're in an abusive relationship with the Baltimore Orioles and the Baltimore Ravens. If you're a Ravens fan, so if you would have told every Orioles fan, diehard or casual, during the pandemic that they were going to win 275 games in 22, 3, and 4 combined, and that they were going to be 0-7 in the playoffs in 23 and 24, and that they weren't even going to sniff a World Series, they'd laugh at you. So, yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm not content with simply averaging 91, 92 wins a year and getting to the postseason. Because, look, I'm 40 years old. The Orioles last won the World Series a year before I was born.
I'm 36.
That's the last time they won the World Series. I've seen them get to the playoffs. I've seen them get to the ALCS 3 times, and I've seen them win a combined 4 games in those 3 ALCS appearances. I'm done with that. I'm not okay with being. I hear it on the radio all the time. I hear Ed Norris say it on 105.7 on the Big Bad Morning Show. I hear him say, "Isn't it nice that we're here? Isn't it nice to be here compared to where we were?" And it's like, yeah, it was nice in 2022, and it was nice in 2023. Now, go win some damn games in October. Go get to a World Series, because I've seen playoff teams. It's just like the Ravens. If they get to the AFC Championship game, they don't get to a Super Bowl. I don't want to hear it. The season is not a success if you don't get to the point where you can win a championship. Neither teams are doing that right now. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm content with this team just being good. No, this team needs to be effing great. They need to be effing great, and they need to get there. They need to win.
And speaking of radio, I listen to 105.7 The Fan way more than I should for my own mental health and for my
It's
own
the only
safety.
game in town.
It's the only game in town, which is true. But I drive in a van all day. I'm an inmate transport driver for the Maryland Correctional System, so I'm in the van hours a day. So I have time to listen to the radio. I hate acknowledging that I agree with Jason La Canfora more and more as the time goes on when it comes to the Baltimore Orioles. I used to think that he was just sour about losing access and not getting a job at Madison and all this stuff. I used to think that was just him being the loud guy shouting at the clouds from his lawn. The man's right about a lot.
Yeah.
This baseball team needs to take the next step. And I'm not going to be happy if we go to a divisional series or the wild card series and we lose again.
No,
it's unacceptable. You're wasting Adley, you're wasting Gunnar, you're wasting Westberg, you're wasting Holiday. People are forgetting that 3 out of those 4 guys are represented by Scott Boras, which means 2 out of those 3 guys aren't going to be here when the time comes.
Yep, that's absolutely correct.
So you're then on top of that, with the way the way the last year started, Matt Holiday is in his son's ear. Probably not nearly as much as he was last year, but Holiday knows the game. He's a World Series champion. He played 2 decades. Do you really think he's going to let Jackson sign here long term?
No. He wants to play shortstop.
He wants to play shortstop first and foremost. And then number 2, if they're not going to go out there and be serious about getting guys to win a World Series, Jackson Holiday might be playing shortstop in Dodger blue in 7 years. Because they'll pay him.
Yeah.
I look at more than just the game itself. I look at the floating stratosphere around the game.
No, it's you better be terrified that Gunnar Henderson is not going to finish his career in Baltimore, because in 5 years, or 4 years, when it's time for him to be a free agent, he's going to go to free agency. He is not signing an extension before he hits free agency. It's not happening. Scott Boras will not allow him to do it, and he's going to get $600 million. And if it's not from the Orioles, we're going to have the same thing that happened with Manny Machado. It's going to be the same thing.
I tell people this all the time, and I say it on my show. I say it whenever I'm a guest anywhere else when this topic comes up. And I know we've been kind of, on ramble mode a little bit about it, but the only way we keep 3/4 of those guys is if a couple of them cut Boras loose before they hit free agency, and they're not going to.
Right.
The only thing that might be our saving grace is that Boras has royally screwed just about every big name free agent he's had the last 2 off seasons. Because I don't know if anybody is paying attention to Boras. But Boras now is trying to put a new clause in contracts that his players sign to where even if you trade away his client, he wants the team that traded them away to be on the hook for the salary, and they can still go sign another major league contract and get paid twice. Zach brought it up when we were on Pigtown Sports last week that so hypothetically speaking, Tyler O'Neill, he's got the opt out after this year. So if the Orioles trade Tyler O'Neill at the deadline, if Boras would want the Orioles to pay out the rest of his contract for this year, and then whatever team trades for him, he doesn't opt out. He wants the Orioles to pay the other $34 million, and then the other team that he goes to give him another deal.
How is that ever going to happen?
It's not. But that's the type of shit that Boras is up to now.
Right.
He's already he cost Jordan Montgomery a ton of money.
Yeah, cost Blake Snell a ton of money.
Snell last year, he cost him a boatload of money.
It cost Pete Alonso a boatload of money this year.
Yeah, a lot. So now, if these players start getting wise and they're like, we can go get paid with other agents, I think we have a chance. But if Boras is sitting at the negotiation table across from Elias and Rubenstein in the next 5 years, we're in trouble. Like, I really want Like, we need to maximize what we got right now because this is going to be ugly.
And I'm pretty sure Jordan Westburg is also represented by Scott Boras.
I think the only one that's not represented by Boras is Adley Rutschman.
Yep. He'll probably be the only one they can sign to an extension. So.
And the thing is, he's the oldest out of all of them. So by the time he gets to free agency, he's going to be 30.
Yeah. And the Orioles have, according to MLB Pipeline, they have the number 2 overall prospect in baseball who is a better defensive catcher in Samuel Basallo. And so are you really going to extend Adley to be your catcher?
No, you extend him to be your first baseman and your DH. But then you're talking about paying him more money.
Yeah, because a first baseman and DH, if Adley plays first base and DH and he hits 290 with 30 home runs, that dude's getting paid $25, $30 million a year.
And you're going to have to give it to him.
Yep, 100%. All right, today's show brought to you by the CIAA Tournament. Baltimore welcomes the excitement of the Food Lion CIAA men's and women's basketball tournament at the CFG Arena starting this Tuesday, February 25th, and going through March 1st. You can get your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. Matt, before we leave the show, we always do fan interaction. So we're going to go through some of these comments. We'll just give quick takes on the ones that I bring up. Sound good to you?
Awesome, man. I love it.
All right. So we already did the home opener question. Steve Robinson also wants to know who is the Orioles closer this season. It's Felix Bautista. From what everybody's saying, the velocity is still there. He said that he's 100% ready to go for opening day. It's a slow ramp up just because they know that if they don't have him, their bullpen falls apart without him. He's their closer. The problem here, Steve, is that they don't have a contingency plan if Felix is not good to go.
I was gonna say something controversial, not like polarizing or anything, but I believe honestly, if you want to save a pitcher's career on this team and have him be a monster and still pay him to be a superstar, Grayson closes for you if Bautista gets hurt again. But that's never going to happen. I just think Grayson has electric stuff so early that he could be your ninth inning guy for the next 10 years. But
there's a lot of people I've heard say that he's going to be in the rotation. You and I both know he's going to be in the rotation, but the arm plays as a closer. We saw John Smoltz win a Cy Young as a starting pitcher, and then he made the Hall of Fame because he was an all-star
dynamite closer.
He was excellent at both.
But it'll be Bautista though. Kitchers will get it if he goes down, but it's going to be Bautista.
And I can see if Sagano ends up in the bullpen. Reynolds says if Sagano winds up in the relief position, Elias totally failed with Sagano acquisition. Say that, but if Sagano ends up in the bullpen and maybe he fills in to close sometimes, he gets 15 saves, pitches to a sub-2 ERA out of the bullpen, and he has 40 holds this year, are you really thinking that's a failed acquisition?
I don't think he has the velocity and that bulldog mentality. I don't know much about him yet, but I believe he's more suited to be either in the rotation or the long guy that bridges you to Kittredge and Felix.
Yeah, I mean, all I'm saying is if you have to face a guy in a late and close situation, you can throw 6 pitches, you don't know which one's coming, and you've got that pressure on you.
That's fair, but when he's only sitting around 91, 92 at max velocity,
it's tough. Somebody's got to throw hard. You've got to throw hard.
I remember seeing a couple of years ago. I remember watching a game at the stadium where Fuji and Bautista were the 8th and 9th inning guys, and they're both throwing 101, 103, and it's like that looks terrifying because by the time Bautista releases that, he's 52 feet away from you, and that's a 10-mile-an-hour difference from what you want your closer to have.
For sure.
So, I'm not discrediting that, but I think Sugano honestly ends up being the 4, and I believe Suarez is the bullpen.
I think he is too.
I think Suarez would be the pitcher that's okay with being in the bullpen out of everybody we've been talking about.
Yeah, well, and I think he knows he's going to be. I think he absolutely knows that he's taking it from the bullpen. If Suarez is starting games for you, it's because somebody was either ineffective or they got hurt. All right, Picktown Sports, they say, glad to see you on, Matt. We're certainly glad to have you. You saved me from having to do this. Show would have been over 45 minutes ago if I didn't have somebody to do the show with me, so I appreciate it. Randall, he goes on to say Grayson should be the opener. Grayson, Eflin, Sagano, Kramer, Povich. Suarez should be more effective in the bullpen. That's what we were just saying. Suarez is going to be in the bullpen. I don't know that you trot Sagano out there against the Toronto Blue Jays in Game 3 of the season. I think that it's going to go to Kramer. And you're just left Morton out of your rotation.
Something tells me we're going to have a 6-man rotation. So I just had that feeling.
They said that we're not. Elias and High both said we're not, but they're not. They don't tell us anything.
They don't tell the truth. So,
yeah. Daniel says Mountcastle is our best trade piece. I've been saying it all off season. We can get someone for him that can help us, and he doesn't fit in the long term with this team. You're right. Long term, he's not in the Orioles' plans. I would get blasted for this too. I'm going to say it. I've said it a few times. Colton Cowser is your best trade piece this offseason. I don't know that Cowser's ever going to hit higher than 250, 260 at the big league level. And he just finished runner-up for Rookie of the Year for having 2 good months out of a 6-month season. I thought Colton Cowser, you could have gotten a boatload for him, and you have plenty of pieces for people that can play the outfield and take over for Colton Cowser. That's it. I like Cowser. I'm glad he's here, but that was your biggest trade piece.
Mountcastle is the biggest trade piece. Now, if you're talking about trading Cowser, this came up not long ago on another show that I did, where if you move Cowser, hypothetically speaking, you trade him to the San Diego Padres, but you're getting King and you're getting somebody like Tatis back. Where you've got to make it, if they're gonna gut you at that type of level, you need to make it hurt, because the Padres are broke, essentially.
Right.
So or you ask for Machado back. You ask for Machado back, and then you bring Manny home. But I'm not letting Cowser go for just a Michael King or a Dylan Cease or a Logan Gilbert or any of that. No, Cowser is a bona fide outfielder.
You trade Cowser for a guy like Logan Gilbert or a guy like Jared Jones in Pittsburgh or Mitch Keller, because not Mitch Keller, not Mitch Keller.
No, he's maybe Gilbert.
But you trade him to a team, and certainly not for Luis Castillo. You trade Cowser in a deal that gets you a controllable ace level starting pitcher.
Yeah,
and you're not doing it for one guy. The only way you do it for a rental, like a King or a Cease, is if in return, like you said, you get a Tatis or a Machado back. But you're not doing it a 1-for-1 or a package for one of those guys. Like you're not doing that rental 2 years in a row. We saw what happened last time. You're not doing that twice. Randall goes on to say, I expect Sagano could carry his own weight in the rotation and possibly more. I've been saying Wei Yin Chen. You made that comment a little bit earlier, Matt. I've been saying if he's 2014, if he's 2012 to 2016 Wei Yin Chen, then the Orioles got a really solid starting pitcher there who can go out there and pitch big games for you.
Yeah.
I would love to see what Sagano can do. A 6-man rotation makes so much sense to me, but it's so off the wall for like a lot of teams should go to a 6-man rotation, because you want to talk about keeping your pitchers healthy. Go to a 6-man rotation, take them from throwing 170 to 140, 130. That's how you keep.
I agree. I totally agree. I think Sagano is going to be surprisingly good this year. I'm not saying that he's going to go out there and be an ace, but if he climbs up to that number 2 or number 3 role, like, hey, you struck gold. But then, he's only here for a year. So what are you talking about? Paying a 36-year-old Sagano $20 million for 2 years after this?
Exactly.
Like, that's
The Orioles rotation is filled with a bunch of guys who can either throw a 3.5 ERA or a 4.25 ERA. Every single one of them has done both. Every single one of them. So, we're going to see how the rotation goes. I'm hoping that they're going to be closer to 3.5 than the 4.25. AJ, he's talking about Brandon Hyde here. This guy is laughable. 1 year of Burns, and they got a first-round pick back, and they know how to draft in the league. AJ's talking about you. This guy is laughable. 1 year of Burns, and they got a first-round pick back, and they know how to draft through that. I'm okay with that. Left off. Now, Hyde, I agree, is a problem. He sucks, and hopefully they make the change to Buck Britton soon during the season. So I'm going to take this one first, because I think it's rude to say somebody who did me solid is guessing on my show is laughable. Cool. And especially when you misspell Burns. Now, here's the thing: the Orioles got a competitive balance. They got a first round pick back for Corbin Burns, but it's not the top pick. So you can't get the top pick in the draft from the Arizona Diamondbacks. I don't know what pick they have, but the Orioles don't get that. They're going to get their next highest pick.
I think it's an A or a B competitive round pick.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. 2, they traded away an everyday infielder, and they traded away a guy who could be a lefty, a big-time lefty, high-leverage bullpen arm for you in DL Hall. Now, look, would Joey Ortiz be playing over any of the guys that are in the Orioles infield right now? Absolutely not. He would absolutely, but I also think if he were here, Mateo and Arias probably are not here. Now, here's the thing: the draft has been good. They've drafted well. That liftoff, what they said was liftoff. Michael Elias firmly put his foot in his mouth. Firmly put his foot in his mouth when he said liftoff. I think that he thought he was going to be able to sign more guys, and then John Angelos was like, "Where are you getting this money from? I'm not doing that. I'm trying to get Paul McCartney to come play concerts in our outfield. I'm not giving you money to go sign this player." I think he put his foot in his mouth, just like he put his foot in his mouth at the trade deadline in 2022. And I think that Michael Elias continues to put his foot in his mouth. I think he's a good overall good GM, but he says some stupid things sometimes. I wish he would just stop talking publicly. Brandon Hyde, I think we can agree that at least the three of us can agree that Brandon Hyde is a problem. But let's not call somebody who did us a solid here today laughable because you don't agree with it.
Here's the thing. I never once said Elias couldn't draft. It's obviously evident. It's evident that he can based on the talent we got on this team. But I'll challenge that by saying, show me one good pitcher he has drafted.
They don't draft pitchers.
They don't draft pitchers.
Not
they don't sign them.
Yep. Now, Zach Moore would fight back and say that there's a lot of really good pitchers at the lower levels for the Orioles.
That's nerd analytics shit. No. No.
You said it, not me, my friend.
I call
AJ
nerds
said
all the time.
Francona didn't want to leave Ohio. Maybe not.
I mean, I can understand that.
Sure. Give Buck Britton a shot. I don't think Buck Britton's here if he's not at least in the back of their minds as somebody to potentially replace Brandon Hyde. AJ also said Robinson Chirinos over Adam Jones. I think Robinson Chirinos is also. I think that the Orioles' next manager is already in-house. I think that he's already in-house. It's just a matter of who it's going to be.
Yep, I agree.
Adit says, does Adam Jones have any interest to move from Barcelona and really be a coach? He still lives there. No, I mean, Adam Jones he's here. He's an assistant to the GM. I think he has a home in Barcelona, and I think he's helping with the Spain World Baseball team. But I'm pretty sure his main home is still in San Diego. He has a home there. I think he has a home there, Tokyo, Barcelona, and in Baltimore. I think he's going to be around a lot this year in Baltimore during the season.
If they fire Hyde and they say, AJ, take the bench, he's saying yes.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion.
We respectfully disagree that I don't think they have any plans for Adam Jones to be the manager. But that's just I'm respectfully disagree.
Respect that.
Randall says, why O'Hearn, Mullins, and Mateo are still on this team is beyond me. More Hyde's loyalty BS. Hyde should be fired. They're on this team. Michael Elias wants to get here. If Michael Elias didn't want him here, they wouldn't be here. O'Hearn and Mullins from June on hit about 279 last year with a 388 on base percentage. And he's the only person to hit in the playoffs. If Cedric plays the way he did from about June 9th on, that's a really good player on your ball club. He cannot get off to that ice cold start like he did last year. He absolutely cannot. Mateo's here. If Mateo's anything more than the occasional start against a left-handed pitcher and pinch running duties, I'm going to be furious. It will be 4 straight seasons where a guy who hits 212 is getting extended playing time. It just doesn't make any sense with the guys that you have on the roster. And O'Hearn, again, makes no sense to me for him to be on the roster. AJ, what irked me was when Krirsek got hit in the head, nobody came out, nobody retaliated. Brendan Hyde went after the bench. Everybody came out when Krirsek got hit. There was pretty much almost a brawl there. when Keursted got hit in the head. So it seemed like the Yankees pulled the team out of first place, which reflects on the manager.
I agree.
I can see. I do think that Brandon Hyde does not stick up for his players nearly enough. He'll be vocal like once or twice a year where it's like it can go viral. But aside from that, I don't think he sticks up for his team.
From a team that's had Earl Weaver and Ray Miller and Buck Showalter in this dugout, he's weak.
Yeah. Hyde would beat the O's 2 nights in a row. Hyde should be gone. He 100% did.
Yeah, we hit that earlier.
Yeah, 100% did. Let's see. AJ says, I like that 1-2-4, except switch out O'Neill or Keursted at 4 over Adley. Adley should be 5. I would love to see Adley hit 5. I would love to see Westberg hit 4. The guy just drives in runs. He was born driving in runs and hitting balls into the gap. I think that I would love to see him hit 4, but I can guarantee you that Tyler O'Neill, if he's healthy, he's hitting 4th 98% of the time. AJ wants to know, you guys still think a trade is in the works? I don't. Nope. I don't. It's going to be a minimal trade, but I think that the main cogs in this roster are going to be here. I think they're already here.
That ship sailed.
Yeah. AJ, Kobe Mayo will not make the team. Keursted will because they love Mountcastle. Kobe Mayo is not making the team. That's been true. He's absolutely not. Unless he hits 600 with 10 home runs this spring, he's not making the team. He's going back to Norfolk because they brought back Ryan O'Hearn. Again, it all comes back to Ryan O'Hearn being here. It makes absolutely no sense. He can't play defense anywhere, and he's 32 years old. It makes no sense. Daniel, I honestly would have been a little bit angry if we re-signed Santander for the same reasons you laid out. He would be blocking our young talent that needs to play. Exactly. Yep. A lot of people don't see it that way, but it comes down to a roster crunch, and he would hit third. He would absolutely hit third on the team. That sucks. We get another first-round pick for Santander because even now I got some stuff to give him generational wealth. Again,
cool with that.
Yeah, and you get it from a division rival for the Blue Jays. I'd much rather have Bradfield's got to prove he can hit. Bradfield's, but Mullins can't really hit either. It would take us forever to get through all of these. Jordy Helm says appreciation post. Love the content with PTS. Good stuff. Matt, I know you got to get out of here. I appreciate you taking time for us today. These shows always go way longer than an hour. Cool. I apologize. I just get talking baseball, but I can't stop. So
I got you, man.
What can we plug for you before we get out of here?
Just that you can find me all baseball season long over on Pigtown Sports for me and Tim Malarkey for Foul Ball Talk. Just catch us over there on that YouTube channel and on our channels on X. And then during football season, if you guys are Ravens fans, Daniel Wilcox and I have a weekly Ravens show. We have a bunch of guests. We interviewed Eric DaCosta this year. Awesome. Bart Scott came on from ESPN. So I got to interview Jarrett Johnson, a whole bunch of guys that we grew up watching. So once the football season gets going, we're going to have a draft special. He's currently on the USO tour right now for the Ravens, going to military bases over in Europe. So once all that is, done, we'll be back to, kicking out some stuff for football. But you can find me over on Pigtown Sports. Paul, I appreciate you, man. This is such a good show.
Yeah, man. I had a plan for the show. We did not follow it, and that's totally okay because the conversation we ended up having was just awesome. It's nice to be able to talk to somebody who has a lot of the same viewpoints that I do because I think that they're realistic viewpoints. They're not negative. They're realistic because we have eyes and we see what's going on with this team, and we believe that they're that close to being a World Series contender, and they aren't doing the things to get there. So, Matt, I will definitely be in contact for future shows. Appreciate your help today, man. Go enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening, okay?
All right. Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome. See you, man.
All right.
That was Matt Trigger from Pigtown Sports joining us on the program today. Thank you to Matt for joining us. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Without you, we don't have a show. Thank you to all of our loyal listeners and fans and viewers. Without you, we would 100% do not have a show. And special thanks to Zach Moore for getting Matt to join the show with us today. Otherwise, we would have been done an hour ago. Maybe somebody would have preferred that. But guys, Zach will be back with us next Sunday evening at 5 p.m.